Well, let's get to special teams. We've talked enough about
There's
that.
Boomer's slide right here.
Boomer, here's your slide.
Sure.
Now the reality is this slide looks light on names because we're only talking about the specialists that would be on it. But literally what we just went through, all these previous slides, like we said, how many countless number of those guys are going to find their way on the punt teams and kickoff returns, and some of those DBs are going to be returning kicks and returning punts, so that's an opportunity. But specifically to this right now, this roster, these are the 4 guys that are specialists. And we have Marco Ortiz, senior deep snapper, transfer from Florida. Timmy Bleekrode is the junior kicker. So he came here last season. Brian Buschini, junior punter. He was from Montana a year ago. And then Tristan Alvano, the true freshman kicker from Omaha Westside. Normally, as they said, they wouldn't normally have 2 kickers on scholarship at the same time. But Alvano is potentially a generational, once in a generation kind of in-state kicker for sure. He was just outstanding at Westside. And to me, he was a non-negotiable. You had to go out and get him. So I'm glad that they did.
Yeah. And you can't really have any complaints with the specialists that we have here. I mean, you got a couple with experience, which is good. Alvano, like you said, has all the potential in the world as that home state kid. So, politically, you had to give him that offer. And you mentioned it, just this is a place for opportunities for lots of people to get playing time. Now, we've heard it spoken of already. We've flogged that Aquatic Equine many times about how important special teams is when it comes to needing game-changing plays. And, Rule and Foley have talked about that. That's something big they're really focusing on this year, because our special teams efficiency has been crap, in terms of especially return game. It's been awful for years. And I think, you'll see guys work themselves into it, but I think you'll see guys, a good chance of players like Billy Kemp who've returned, punts in the past.
Yeah.
I think you're likely to see him probably starting the season. And it's a good spot for Tommy Hill to maybe, get some kickoff returns. And we've got a lot of running backs still on the roster. It's an opportunity for some of them to, fill in those spots too. So, but it's going to be an opportunity for people who really want to go out and make a name for themselves. We've got some experience on the return game, and for the love of God, if you could just not have to fair catch every one of them and just go forward for a few yards, that'll be a nice positive for the season.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I want to highlight, I'm going to go back for a second to the coaching staff. There was a season not too long ago where that special teams analyst was what we had, and that was it. And here we have Ed Foley, who's quickly ingratiating himself to Husker Nation. People like him a lot here. He's a kind of a boisterous guy, and he's been around going to all these different schools.
He fits in well.
He fits in really well. So he's our special teams coordinator, but we also have Josh Martin, a special teams analyst. So there's definitely more. You would definitely look at this and say that there's more of an emphasis being put, at least from just a bodies, getting guys out there. Boomer, go back to, you've talked about this before. It starts with the emphasis and practice on this. Mm-hmm. What do you put onto it? And having 2 guys dedicated to that, and then what Coach Rules talked about that. I mean, what does that make you feel going into spring ball that they're going to take this serious and really treat this like the third element of the football team?
Yeah, I think we've seen it from prior regimes, dynamic names that, I think they've said they pay attention to it, but clearly the results showed they weren't, or they certainly weren't giving it the focus
it was hard to hide at times, that's for sure.
It was, yeah, very much so. And that's been the case for a while, it seems here. And again, we mentioned before, special teams isn't the sexy thing people like to talk about. No one loves talking special teams, punting, punt returns, things like that. But
you do. You love talking.
Yeah, because it's a huge part of the game, and it's forgotten and misunderstood and underappreciated. And when it works, that when you don't have to talk about it, that's great because it's working. And that's what you want it to be.
Boomer, remind me. Yeah. Bleekrode was kicking for us last year. Who else was also a place kicker? Did we have a kickoff specialist? Why am I thinking there's one other name that?
Yeah, gosh, was somebody else kicking last year?
A bunch of walk-ons.
Yeah, we had people all over the place. Yeah.
But Bleekrode is established, but we got a comment there from our friend of the show, Eric Francis, I think, saying that he thinks Alvano is going to win the starting job by August. That should be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be a good opportunity, I think, for both of them to see what they can do. And Tally, if you're kicking them out of the end zone every kickoff, that's what you want. Give that person the job. So.
I'll make a comparison. It's a weird comparison, but I'm going to make one. We talked about Hoiberg earlier, and that this season, it hasn't been a success. We didn't get it to the postseason, but it was better. At least it was better than what we'd seen in previous years. Last year's special teams, there's still some bad memories of onside kicks and some weird things, but for the most part, I mean, if you had to grade it compared to some of the absolute disasters that we had in the years prior, we at least started to make a 30-yard field goal again. We started to do some fairly normal things. And really, Buschini, of all the guys, I mean, that's really important to have him back. I mean, he changed the field for us. And he was punting like a Big Ten punter was last year. And that was instantaneously noticeable on the field and played a big role for us. So I see a lot of benefit there. The Marco Ortiz one is interesting to me, the deep snapper, just because, again, sitting at 100-plus scholarships. In a very traditional sense, I usually think of deep snappers could probably come out of your walk-on program after a couple of years, but at least right away in year one, they want to make sure they have somebody that they can count on right away. And we lost our deep snapper from a year ago, so all right, that they offered the scholarship right away for it, but it was better. It was better last season than it had been prior.
Yeah, the dumpster fire wasn't smoldering quite as much. So
it's like one of those tire fires that just really hard to get out. So it's a little
exactly.
Dave, to answer your question too, yes, we did have a kickoff specialist last year, and in fact, I had him on the show last summer. Brendan Frankie,
that's right.
Gretna graduate, Morningside University transfer. Only 15 kickoffs were returned last year for an average of 18 yards, which is really good. It was best for like 9th in the country, I think, overall.
Okay.
So that was actually
wasn't doing that
point of our Huskers last year.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I mean, Bleekrode wasn't doing that. So it'll be interesting to see who, if anything, is our kickoff guy compared to our place kicker. And for the deep snapper, Marco Ortiz, if you're listening to the show right now, if we have to say your name at any point the rest of the year, that's a bad sign. We don't want to mention your name, Marco. Do your job, and we'll be very happy.
No offense,
Brady did it at the spring game or something. Maybe he does
if you want to come on the show, sure.
Yeah. If we have him on the spring game, if he does a really good job, it's something we notice how well it's being a deep snapper is. Whatever, we can bring it up. But
speaking of deep snapper, Damian Jackson, the former Husker who the Navy SEAL that he went to Buffalo last year, and now he's actually working out. I think I read that he was working out even in Nebraska this offseason, trying to get into the pros to be a deep snapper. He's 30 years old, but if you can, I mean, that's a skill. If you've got it, you could make a decent little career out of that.
If he makes the NFL, there's already an option for his movie.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
I turn 49 next week, and I'm actually thinking about trying out as like a water specialist for the
Huskers. So, Husker fans, Redcasters watching this, like I said, give us a thumbs up for what you've seen here if you like it, and leave a comment for us. Tell us where you think we got it right. Tell us where you think we got it wrong. Try to be polite. I mean, come on, use your manners. But I think for the most part, this at least gives you a good idea. We're not trying to predict depth charts yet or anything like that. I mean, my goodness, we haven't seen these guys play, and the coaches haven't either. But we wanted to at least give an idea going into spring ball, and that's what this was about. We'll put a link in the show here as well to last week's show where we did this with the offense. So, we're just trying to go through position groups, say who the names are that are scholarship guys. We hope that we see a lot of walk-ons, make names for themselves too. I'm a big walk-on proponent, but this gives you an idea of some of those 103 or 104 scholarship guys that we have. Just a crazy number of guys for Coach Rule and staff to go through in their first spring.